Hi everyone, wanted to talk to you a little bit about weaving and writing your research essay with other sources. Oftentimes I discuss how we are all at a table, right, with our experts, and our experts are talking and we are talking back and they're talking to each other, and we want to create that environment in our writing where it sounds more like a conversation instead of people talking over here and then I say something, but we want more of that interaction. And so Ballinger talks about it as the weave of research writing. So here he has in chapter 4, what is it like? Well, it is a collision, he says, right? So he has these next couple pages and he uses this, and it's an appendix B if you want to check it out. It's a section of a research essay, and there's different types of information in it. So we have the writer's commentary, which we want, of course, to be kind of the majority of the writing, what you have to say, your analysis, your interpretation. Then, of course, it has some readings that you've done. Maybe you have your interview in there, and then maybe you have some your own observations, things that you've seen, things that you or opinions that you have because of the experiences that you've led. So you can see here on page 172 and 173, right, the different colors of the person starting to speak in the writing and then maybe other research and then going back to the analysis, going back to the research, and then going into kind of some observations and some interview. So it should look like this, where like each piece is not necessarily the exact same size, they're kind of blended together. And this is what we want for writing. We don't want it necessarily to be like novice writing where it says, this is what I say, this is what they say, this is what I say, this is what they say. We want it to look more like a tapestry. So here we have on page 174 and 175 some helpful hints about handling quotations. And I'm going to have you practice this with some of the quotations that you've pulled during your note taking, just so you can start to mesh your ideas with outside sources. So here we have some issues that happen, right? The problem number one, stop and blop quotations. This is when they're just kind of dropped right in, but we don't necessarily want that. What you want is not to just drop things in, but to explain how it is. So oftentimes I see this in students writing where it's like this. It says, if it's anyone guess how many people believe in alien abduction, period, right? One of the earliest studies of abduction found in 1700, blah, blah, blah. So it goes on, but there's this odd kind of stopgap here, and instead of just blopping it in, which is kind of passive blending, we want to be more active writers. We want to take a hold of our quotations and make them blend into our own writing. So here we could, instead of just using this drop quotation, we could paraphrase. And this says, it's anyone's guess how many people believe in alien abduction, but initial findings were that 1,700 people claimed to have been abducted. Several contested surveys said that the number of abductees claimed might total more than 5% of the population. First of all, that's crazy. But also notice the difference. Instead of just a drop quotation here, we have kind of a paraphrase using, right, those quotations of very specific wordings. Also, we have the citation afterwards. So here it's really clear that this is really your ideas, this is their ideas, but it's much more of a melting together. The second problem that sometimes comes to play in student writing is the breadless sandwich quotation. So it's another passive approach. And in this case, it's mostly just pushed in without any kind of commentary or analysis of the writer. This I often see in my kind of novice writers, my freshman writers. But we want to make sure that our voice is present and we are saying something. So here we have the passive blending, where here we just have like a little introduction of it's easy to dismiss the widespread belief that alien abduction is simple delusion. And then they just drop in this giant block quotation and it follows here on page 176. And then at the end, it kind of like summarizes a little bit more, but we don't want that. We want active blending, which means you were really thoughtful about what you pulled in and you thought about how that connected. You clarified it, you clarified, you analyzed, you interpret what did it say and why did it say that. So you can see here I have a much bigger interpretation that's starting off my quotation. I even tell who's going to be talking, right? Michael Zimmerman in Philosophy Today argues those strong verbs that it's not socially healthy to ignore the abduction experience. And then we go into that quotation. This is really, really important. And I really think it builds your ethos as a writer, because you're saying, not only have I thought about it in this way, but this other expert has thought about it. And by citing these other experts, you're really building your credibility as a new writer to academia. Also notice afterwards, right, we have all of this extra information, like, what do you think about this? And a question asked. So you're really dialoguing with this information. And hopefully your notes will help you in this, and you can see some of that starting to happen already since we've already done some note taking. Problem 3 is the kitchen sink quotation. This is the easiest thing, and I see students do it all the time where they just like plop something in. They're not really sure what to put in. They know what's important, but they're not sure what it says. So this really tells me that maybe you weren't as active a reader with your research as you should have been. So make sure that we're gleaning the most important information out of your quotation. So here, this is just a big block like, he spoke about this, and this is what he said, and just throws it in. But instead of doing that, we want to do more active blending, saying things like, Black Elf believed the power of the world always works in circles, noting the roundness of the sun, the earth, and the stars. He couldn't understand why white people live in square houses. It's a bad way to live, for there's not power in a square. Now, yes, you can see that this is much longer, and I think sometimes that's why students like to use it, because they're trying to bulk up their essays. But I promise you, in this research essay, it's not going to be about bulking up your paper. You're going to have so much to say. It's really going to be about what and how can I focus my paper to say exactly what I want to say. So take these extra steps to really narrow in on what you want to say. Now, there are some quick tips for controlling quotations. It continues, and these are the ones I'm going to ask you to practice on an assignment. The first way is to kind of graft the quotation. Sometimes you can just use a word or phrase, and I always think of it like a skin graft of like building off of what's already there. You also might want to, add emphasis for something, and you can see that they do this here. You can also try the Billboard quotations. So typically, you do this by italicizing a phrase or a sentence. So they have one here, right, where you add some emphasis with the italics to say, like, this is really important. This is what I need to say. Then there's also splicing quotations. So sometimes you want to, and I think this is, most often what happens and what students use, you want to prune away all the unnecessary information, especially in some of the wordy documents we've been reading and research. It's important to just pull what you need. So here we have a really long list of movements, but you can really narrow it down by your most important points and just have a few of those sentences, and perhaps just use a few of the paraphrase words instead of that whole giant quote. And then, of course, if we have interview material, we want to be able to use it just like we would any other type of research, but that might want to be pulled in a little bit differently. You probably want to explain, like, during a phone interview, or I emailed this professor and he responded saying, right, and then giving that information. So the interview material will look a bit different, because you want to say that this is an interview that I created, and we'll have that in our works cited as well. But it is important, if you did the interview, absolutely put it in there if you feel like it's going to help your paper overall. So this is it for handling your quotations and weaving them in your writing. This is just practice right now. We're going to be gearing up to writing the essay soon. So as always, if you have questions, please let me know. But I just want to see your practice in this so that we can make sure our writing is fluid with other people, and so that our ideas are being exchanged with those around us.